Hello everyone, in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make a quick little tutorial on how you can make a URL shortener. So you'll notice from the URL I'm on right now, downloadmycode.com/short, this is the directory that I'm going to be using, but you will have to be responsible for finding a short URL. Obviously I couldn't buy one for the sake of this video, but Google have a short URL for their URL shortener, and for example bit.ly, it's just kind of a short URL. Downloadmycode.com/short is a very long URL, so it wouldn't be realistic for a URL shortener, but this will still work if you get your own domain name. This is the steps that you'll undertake in order to create a URL shortener. So what I've done is I've created an index.php file in my short directory, so I can go back here and refresh and you can see blank page, the page exists. So what I'm going to do is now we're going to create a basic HTML skeleton. So we've got our title here and we're going to call it URL shortener. I'm sure that's how you spell it. It's going to be really awkward otherwise. So we're not going to do any styles or anything like that, so we're just going to create input, give it the type of text and the name being URL, and this is where the user is going to enter the long URL and we're going to shorten it. So now underneath we make an input and give it the type of submit and the name of, I'm going to give it a name, that's fine, and then we give it a value of, so that's all perfect now. Obviously very ugly, but you can style it however you want. So now we need some jQuery, so I'll go to Google jQuery, which is what you search if you want the Google hosted jQuery library, and we can copy it here without even visiting the website. And then up here, paste this in, zoom out a little bit, and then I'll put some code down here. Normally you create a JavaScript file for your code, but in this case we're just doing it really quickly. So you want to say document.ready function, which obviously means when the document is ready to run jQuery and JavaScript, then do whatever I put here. So in this case we're going to say input type equals submit dot click function e, pass it in the parameter of e, and then we're going to say e dot prevent default. So make sure that when we click the submit button it doesn't do the default reaction to the click. So now we're going to just say alert, and then we'll alert the value of what we put into the box. So we'll say alert.val, which means .value, the value of what's in the URL field. So now we'll wait for that to be done, press OK, and we'll type hello, wrong, correctly, and we'll get alert hello. So this is good. So now what we want to do is we're going to have to do some checks to make sure they've actually entered the URL. So if let's actually say var URL equals, and then set it equal to the value of what they put in the box, just for short. So now we need to say if URL.length equals 0, return false. But also we can make a little errors thing. So I'll do a line break here, and I'll say p class errors, which would be blank by default. And we'll say before we return false, we'll say errors. Whoops, please enter a URL. So now we'll see how that works. So I'll refresh, and I'll leave this blank, and I'll say whoops, please enter URL. Problem is it doesn't go away when we do enter a URL. So let's copy errors.html, and at the very top underneath prevent default we'll paste this in and set it to blank, so that if we get it wrong, if we don't enter the URL, it'll say please enter URL, but when we do, it will go away. So that's good. What we could do is check if it's a valid URL and all that stuff, but kind of this is trying to be a quick video, so let's kind of get rid of all of the stuff that we don't need. So now that we know that the URL is probably okay, we'll run Ajax. So this kind of writes it out in a proper way. Let's actually use the post method, a little bit shorter, and we're going to say slash short slash includes slash process.php. The way this works is I've done a slash to go back to my root directory. The short is obviously the folder that we're in here, and then includes is a folder I'm going to make right now, just to make everything a bit more tidy, go inside that there. And then there's process.php, so I'll create a file in here called process.php, and then we can open that up in our Sublime text as well. And obviously you can see here it says param1, you can pass it some parameters. So I'm going to say param1 URL equals the value of URL that we created up here. And then what we can do is say alert, do we get this data call back here? So if I say alert data, as long as I go in here, if I go into my process file and I say print our underscore post, so all the stuff that's been sent to this file. Then you'll see that once we've reloaded the page, we'll get that, and then we can print it out. It says URL equals HHH. That's perfect. We know that works fine. So now we're in a place that processes it, but we need a database to store all of this information. So I've got my database here, and I'm going to create a table. The table is going to be called URLs. For example, you can call it whatever you want, as long as you remember the name. And then the ID is going to be equal to an integer. But the length is going to be 10 sometimes. It's going to be our primary key. This is what we're going to use to make our URL shortener work. So the ID might be 12345, and all that our database does then is it knows to associate the URL with 12345. Whenever it sees 12345, we really mean youtube.com. So I'll say URL in there, and maybe that's a word that we can't use. So let's say URL link, really bad, let's keep it like that, link to page and the ID. We can keep the date shortened as well. Maybe we don't even need that. So we've got the link to the page, which should be text, and we'll set it to, what's the longest it can be? Maybe 500 characters. I've never really seen a URL longer. Maybe we should make it 1,000 characters just to accommodate, you know, what it might be. This is the length, the max length that the link can be. And that's it. That's pretty much it. It's very simple database. So let's save that. Take us to inside it. Go. So obviously, as you can see now, it's empty, as it should be. We haven't put anything in there. So I'll create an include to server document root, which means, again, go back to our root directory, but this time in PHP. And we're going to say short slash no, we're not. We're going to say includes, which is the root directory include slash init.php, which is a file I've made to connect to my database. So this is just a database connection. You can use your database connection as long as you can access a database from in this process page. It's going to be fine. So we've got our database, but now let's also include a functions file that we're going to make. So document root, and this time slash short slash includes and slash functions.php. And now what we're going to do is we're going to say ID equals rand, so generate a random number, and this is where the URL shortening comes in. So we're going to use 3 digits, so it'll make more sense in a second. So if I just say a number between 111 and 999, that means that obviously it can only be a 3-digit number, because any number between 111 and 999 is a 3-digit number. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say if ID exists ID. So basically this is a function that we're going to create now that says if this ID is already assigned to a URL somewhere else, then we're going to return false. So let's stop here. But also if the ID exists, then ID equals another random number. Again, this is a quicker way of doing it. There's a chance that this might also be in use, but the chances of generating 2 numbers between 1 and 1,000 are pretty limited. So now it's time to create this ID exists file. So if I go in here, I create a new file called functions.php. Then let's go inside it. Oops, PHP. We can then say function ID exists ID, and then we need to include our init.php file to get access to our database. And then we say row equals con, my variable to connect to my database. So okay, so select all from what we call our database, URLs, where ID equals ID. And then you say if row num rows. So if the number of rows brought back by that query is greater than 0, so the row does exist, then you want to return ID exists true, because it does exist, and then else return false. So now we go back to our process page. So if ID exists, which means if ID exists equals true, then you want to generate another random number and carry on. So by the way, by the time we get to this point, chances are we'll have an ID that doesn't match one that already exists, which obviously is what we need. What we should do actually is check if this URL's already been shortened. So if URL has been shortened, and then URL. But first we need to define what URL is. So URL equals, oops, put it there. $_ post URL. So obviously this is what we sent from our file over here. So URL equals that. If URL has been shortened URL, then all you got to do is return get URL ID of the URL. So we know that the URL has been shortened before, so there's no point in creating another row in our database and taking up one of our precious IDs. So what we'll do is we'll just return that to the user. So what we'll do is we need to create this function also. Go in here, function get URL ID from the URL. We need to include our init.php again, and we want to say row equals con query select URL from URLs where ID equals oh no, sorry, this is trying to get the ID. Select ID from URLs where URL equals URL, and then we want to return row fetch associative array, and then we just want the ID. So that's good. So if the URL has been shortened, return that. So if it hasn't been shortened before, so this is a URL we've never seen before, then what we want to do is insert it into our database. So we'll create a function called insert ID, and then we'll say ID and URL. We'll pass those both in, and now we'll create this function in our functions. So function insert ID, and we want ID and URL. Again, we need to include our database into this function as well. Functions are kind of separate things. It can't read up into this function to get the database, sadly. So what we want to do now is say con query insert into URLs, and then we want to insert into ID and URL. Values is ID and URL. And now what we do is say if con string length con error equals 0, no errors, return true. And then what we can do now is we can just run this like that, and then echo back. We want to echo back the URL, so we'll echo back downloadmycode.com/short $ID equals, and then the ID. And this will work now because obviously it will have been inserted into our database. So you can see we have that. So echo that back. Otherwise, return the ID and all that stuff. So let's see what we have now. So we go to our shortener again. We've saved our code. So then what I'll do is I'll enter the YouTube homepage to test it. So let's go shorten my URL, and fatal error, call to undefined function URL has been shortened. That's because we didn't make this function yet. So what we'll do is we go in here, function URL has already been shortened, and then ID, URL. So then what we want to do is say insert our database again, and then row equals con query select all from URLs where URL equals URL. If row num rows greater than 0, that means it has been shortened before, so return true, and if it equals 0, then return false. So now that should be fine as long as we saved. Yep, all our stuff's been saved correctly, so let's run it again. Short my URL, download my code, short ID equals that. So now if we check, oh, it didn't insert it, so that's a problem. Oh, it's linked to page. Oh, of course it's linked to page. Oh god, we have to change that in all of them. Let's say select ID from URLs where link to page equals that. Select ID from URLs where link to page equals that. The ID, okay, that should be okay. Oh god, that's so annoying when stuff like that happens. So I go like that, bang, 740. It's in 740youtube.com. So now if I also click it again, it should also, oh, it didn't return 740, that's an issue. So if it has been shortened, then we want to get URL ID, which is a function that exists here, return the ID. Maybe we echo it instead of returning it. Maybe that's a thing because it's Ajax. Let's try again. Okay, so it's returned multiple things here. But we haven't returned, so let's return true, there. So we want to return this dot RID. So now we don't have to refresh, we just go like that. Short 740, no matter how many times I shorten it, it won't keep entering it into the database. Oh, actually it has, that's weird. Let's check why it's done that. It's because we didn't return true before. So if we delete both of these, and then we go, okay, go, shorten my URL, 890, 890, 890. It won't have been entered 3 times, it'll have been entered 1 time because we don't need to keep taking up our IDs. So now that works, that's absolutely fine. If we change it to facebook.com, shorten my URL, it'll give us a different code and we'll insert it into the database with a completely different ID. But that's all good. That's how you shorten URLs. But how do we make it so that if I send it to my friend, then he can access it? So instead of alerting this data, what we want to do is we want to set the errors element.html equals, and then we'll set it to a href equals. So this is the link. Then we'll go in there, we'll say data, and then in here we'll say data. So now what that does is, also we want to do target underscore blank. So it opens in a new tab. So now we can see what happens. So facebook.com, fine. But if I want YouTube, so actually I want to download my code. So shorten my URL, and we've got this short code, and you take it to that and it does absolutely nothing. Also, that's a good point. What we also want to do is echo back with HTTP or HTTPS, depending on which you have. So let's put that in there. And all that does is now, it means that if I shorten a URL and click it, it will take me obviously back to this page, but it'll say ID equals 710. So what we should do is on this page at the very top, we want to say PHP and then if is set underscore get ID, which means that no one's trying to shorten a URL. Someone has clicked the URL that's already been shortened by someone else. Then we want to do okay. We want to URL equals get URL location, and we give it our ID. So all we'll do now is create a variable called ID and then pass it the underscore get ID. So over now in our functions, we'll create a new function called function get URL location from the ID. So now we want to do the reverse of what this does. So we can copy this code over, and it says document root insert our database, select URL from URLs where ID equals ID. Okay, so get URL location, select URL from URLs. We don't want to select URL, we want to select link to page. I keep falling into that trap, and then return that. So now we've got the URL location that it links to. That's all well and good. We can do header location, and then we can do this. So we can do dot URL. Okay, undefined function. Okay, that makes perfect sense. We haven't included our functions in this entire file. Let's put that up there. Obviously, it needs to be above. It works in a linear fashion, so it needs to be above before it's called. Obviously, that makes perfect sense. So let's refresh. And now what it'll do is it'll redirect to our, I don't know where I got this video from. So if I type in HTTPS and then / facebook.com, shorten the URL, got that. Now I can send that to my friend, and then he can just go to his browser, click this, paste it in, and it'll redirect to Facebook. As you can see in our URL, I'm not going to put my Facebook there, and this will just keep working forever. So I download mycode.com / browse, shorten my URL, bang, got the URL, paste it, and we can go, and it'll redirect to the browse page of downloadmycode.com. So this is a very, very, very basic example of a URL shortener. Like I say, downloadmycode.com / short isn't a very short URL. You're responsible, obviously, for finding a short URL. If you can find like 1 or 2 letters, I don't think there's any 1 or 2 letter URLs, domain names left. But the shortest URL you can find is obviously perfect. You can make a cool looking UI, enter your link, and now obviously you'll notice it doesn't even refresh the page. bang, coderbylines.com. You can click the link yourself to make sure that it works, and it'll redirect you to a page, whatever the page is that you've decided on. That's it for this video. I kind of rambled a little bit. I didn't do any preparation for this video. I just kind of thought, that'd be pretty cool to make a tutorial on that. Thanks a lot for watching this video, by the way. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and leave a comment and just let me know. I appreciate, like I say, there's a lot of rambling in this video. There was not a lot of preparation. I'll change that for the next video. But thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you on this channel again for the next video.